The holographic transmission flickered to life, casting an otherworldly blue light across the United Nations General Assembly chamber. Delegates from every corner of the globe sat frozen, their collective breath held in a moment of absolute stillness. The alien envoy towered above the assembled humans, its crystalline exoskeleton refracting light in impossible geometric patterns that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. Ambassador Catherine Rice from the United States delegation felt a cold sweat break out across her forehead. She had spent decades in diplomatic circles, negotiating complex international treaties, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. The Zarkon representative stood nearly 3 meters tall, its multiple eyes, each a different size and color, scanning the room with a predatory intensity that made her skin crawl. "Humans of Earth," the alien began, its voice a strange harmonics that seemed to bypass human ears and resonate directly within their minds. "Your civilization has been evaluated. Your potential for resistance has been calculated. Your fate is predetermined." A series of holographic displays materialized around the chamber, showing massive warships positioned at strategic points around Earth's orbit. Each vessel dwarfed anything humanity had ever conceived, their sleek obsidian hulls absorbing light like massive shadows suspended in space. Weapon systems pulsed with an ominous energy that suggested capabilities far beyond human comprehension. The alien continued, its tone clinical and devoid of emotion. "Your planet occupies a critical sector of galactic infrastructure. Your solar system contains resource deposits that are essential to the continued expansion of the Imperium. You will surrender all territorial rights, submit to complete economic and political integration, and provide mandatory labor conscription." General Michael Rodriguez, seated near the back of the chamber, clenched his fists. He had spent his entire military career preparing for potential extraterrestrial threats, but the reality before him exceeded even his most paranoid scenarios. The alien's proposal wasn't a negotiation. It was a death sentence delivered with mathematical precision. "You have precisely 30 standard galactic cycles to comply," the Zarkon representative stated, its multiple eyes blinking in an unsettling, asynchronous rhythm. "Resistance is mathematically impossible. We have conquered 3,742 civilizations across 16 galactic sectors. Your technological development is primitive. Your military capabilities are negligible." A holographic display began cycling through images. Planets reduced to ash, civilizations erased, entire star systems stripped of resources. Each image was a testament to the Imperium's ruthless efficiency. The message was clear. Humanity was nothing more than another resource to be harvested. Catherine Rice found her voice first. "And if we refuse?" The alien's response was immediate and chilling. "Refusal results in complete planetary sterilization. Your entire species will be removed from existence. No records, no remnants. Complete erasure." The chamber erupted into a cacophony of panicked discussions. Translators struggled to keep up with the multiple languages, the room becoming a storm of human anxiety and barely contained terror. Some delegates wept, others argued, and a few sat in stunned silence. General Rodriguez leaned close to the UN Secretary General. "They've made a critical mistake," he whispered, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The Secretary General raised an eyebrow. "And what mistake is that?" "They've given us 30 days, Rodriguez replied, his voice low and steady. 30 days to prepare. As the holographic transmission began to fade, the Zarkon representative delivered one final statement. Compliance is inevitable. Resistance is a mathematical impossibility. The chamber fell silent. Outside the windows, the first hints of sunrise began to paint the sky, a beautiful morning that now carried the weight of humanity's potential extinction. 30 days. 30 days to determine the fate of an entire species. The countdown had begun. The first 72 hours after the alien ultimatum transformed the world in ways no one could have predicted. In Washington, D.C., an emergency session of global leaders convened within hours of the transmission. The United States Congress, which had been gridlocked for years on nearly every issue, passed unprecedented emergency legislation with a unanimous vote. Every military research project, every classified technology, every experimental weapon system was now on the table. At the Pentagon, General Michael Rodriguez coordinated with a team that hours ago would have been considered impossible. Chinese military strategists sat alongside American commanders. Russian cybersecurity experts worked hand in hand with their former NATO adversaries. The room buzzed with the electric energy of pure survival instinct. Dr. Lisa Chen, a leading quantum physicist from Stanford University, received a classified message that morning. Her top-secret research project, previously buried under layers of academic bureaucracy and government classification, was now humanity's potential lifeline. The message was simple and direct. All resources are now available. Make it work. In Silicon Valley, tech companies that had been fierce competitors now shared their most advanced research. The engineers at SpaceX collaborated openly with teams from Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and international aerospace companies. Prototype designs that would have taken years to develop were now being merged, modified, and accelerated in a matter of hours. The global financial markets, typically a mechanism of economic competition, transformed into a unified resource allocation system. Countries transferred funds across borders with unprecedented speed. The International Monetary Fund and World Bank became coordination centers for a global war effort. Billions of dollars were redirected from consumer markets, entertainment, and non-essential industries into a massive research and development program. Underground research facilities became the new front lines of human survival. A facility in the Nevada desert, previously known only to a handful of government officials, came to life. Experimental propulsion systems, theoretical weapon designs, and cutting-edge material sciences that had been shelved for decades were now being dusted off and fast-tracked. In Mumbai, a team of young engineers began modifying commercial satellite networks into a potential defensive grid. Their lead engineer, Raj Patel, worked with a global team connected through secure quantum-encrypted communication channels. What was once a pipe dream of integrated global defense was now being assembled with desperate creativity. The world's universities emptied as the most brilliant minds were recruited into emergency research programs. Doctoral students found themselves working alongside Nobel laureates. Their theoretical research suddenly transformed into potential survival strategies. The traditional barriers of academic hierarchy dissolved in the face of extinction. Agricultural systems were rapidly reorganized. Countries began stockpiling resources, converting every available space into potential survival infrastructure. Vertical farms in urban centers, previously experimental projects, were now scaled up at unprecedented rates. Governments requisitioned private lands for emergency food production, creating a global agricultural network designed for maximum efficiency. Military bases around the world transformed overnight. Training exercises became survival preparation. Soldiers from different nations, who had once trained to fight each other, now trained together with a singular purpose. Language barriers fell as survival became the only common tongue. In Geneva, the CERN research facility became a critical hub of scientific innovation. Theoretical physicists who had spent careers studying quantum mechanics now applied their most radical theories to potential defensive technologies. The line between theoretical science and practical survival blurred completely. A global communication network emerged, unlike anything in human history. Social media platforms, typically divided by national interests, became unified information-sharing platforms. Crowdsourced research, real-time translation services, and collaborative problem-solving replaced the previous fragmented information landscape. General Rodriguez looked at the rapidly evolving global response and allowed himself the smallest of smiles. The alien ultimatum had done what decades of diplomatic efforts could not. It had united humanity as a single, coherent organism. 30 days. 30 days to transform human potential from a theoretical concept into a practical reality of survival. The world was no longer a collection of nations. It was a single, unified species with one goal: survival. The countdown continued. The research facility, nestled in the remote mountains of Colorado, looked like nothing special from the outside. A nondescript complex of low-rise buildings surrounded by dense pine forests. It could have been mistaken for a government research station or a high-security data center. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. Dr. Jack Reynolds hadn't slept in 72 hours. Coffee cups littered his workspace, each one a testament to the desperate race against time. His team, a collection of the world's most brilliant quantum physicists, engineers, and theoretical researchers, worked in a state of controlled chaos. Whiteboards covered every available wall space, filled with complex equations that seemed to defy traditional mathematical understanding. "We're close," Reynolds muttered, tracing a series of equations with a marker that was nearly out of ink. The alien ultimatum had transformed theoretical research into a matter of species survival. Quantum entanglement, once a purely academic pursuit, was now humanity's potential salvation. Dr. Elena Martinez, a brilliant computational physicist, worked on a custom-built quantum computer that filled an entire room. Unlike traditional computing systems, this machine operated on principles that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Each calculation was a potential breakthrough, each algorithm a weapon against the seemingly insurmountable alien threat. The breakthrough came at 3:17 a.m. on the fifth day of their marathon research session. A series of calculations that had previously resulted in nothing suddenly produced an unexpected resonance pattern. Reynolds watched as the computer screens flickered, displaying a set of quantum interactions that should have been impossible. "Run it again," he commanded, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. The computer complied. The results were consistent. They had discovered a way to manipulate quantum states in a manner that could potentially disrupt advanced energy shielding. What the alien Imperium considered an impenetrable defense became, in human hands, a solvable mathematical problem. Across the facility, other teams worked on complementary projects. A group of materials scientists developed a new class of adaptive alloys that could change their molecular structure in response to external energy signatures. Another team explored quantum communication methods that could potentially bypass the Imperium's advanced communication networks. The facility was a microcosm of human potential. Scientists from 23 different countries worked together, their previous national rivalries forgotten. A young researcher from India worked side by side with a veteran scientist from Russia. A computational expert from Brazil collaborated seamlessly with a theoretical physicist from South Korea. Every breakthrough was immediately shared across a secure global network. What worked in the Colorado facility was instantly analyzed, modified, and potentially replicated in research centers from Japan to Germany. The traditional slow pace of scientific research had been replaced by a real-time, global collaborative effort. Dr. Reynolds called a video conference with key research facilities around the world. The holographic display showed exhausted but excited faces from every continent. Each team presented their latest findings, each presentation a potential key to human survival. "We're not just developing a defensive technology," Reynolds explained to the global team. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of quantum interactions, what the Imperium considers impossible. We're turning into a mathematical problem to be solved." The most promising development came from an unexpected direction. A team led by Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura in Japan discovered a method to create quantum cascade fields, theoretical energy barriers that could potentially neutralize the most advanced alien weapon systems. What had been a complex theoretical concept was now being transformed into a practical defensive technology. Each breakthrough came with immense challenges. The theoretical models were one thing. Practical implementation was another. Every solution created new problems. Every solved equation revealed more complex questions. But the team worked with a singular focus. Survival was not negotiable. The global scientific community had become a single, unified organism. Traditional academic hierarchies dissolved. A junior researcher's breakthrough was as valuable as a Nobel laureate's insight. The only currency was innovation, The only goal was survival. As the sun began to rise over the Colorado mountains, Dr. Reynolds allowed himself a moment of hope. They were close to something extraordinary. The laws of physics were being rewritten, and humanity was doing the writing. 30 days to save the species. 30 days to prove that human potential knew no limits. The countdown continued. The first wave of the Imperium's invasion fleet arrived with the calculated precision of a machine designed for absolute conquest. 12 massive warships, each capable of obliterating entire planetary defense systems, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Their obsidian hulls absorbed light, creating massive shadows that seemed to devour the very fabric of space. Commander Sarah Rodriguez gripped the control interface of the orbital defense platform, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. She had spent her entire career preparing for scenarios that most considered impossible. The experimental quantum disruptor systems were no longer theoretical. They were humanity's first line of defense. All stations, prepare defensive grid, she commanded, her voice calm and clear across the encrypted communication network. The orbital defense platforms that had been hastily constructed looked nothing like traditional military installations. They were a mad fusion of experimental technologies, each one a unique solution born from humanity's desperate innovation. Satellites modified with quantum communication systems interwove with defensive platforms. Ground-based laser arrays charged up, their energy signatures unlike anything the Imperium had encountered before. The alien ships began their approach, confident in their technological superiority. Sensor readings suggested they expected minimal resistance. Previous conquests had taught them that most civilizations crumbled at the mere sight of their invasion fleet. They were about to learn differently. As the first ships crossed the lunar orbit, the human defense grid came alive. Quantum disruptor cannons fired, not with traditional energy weapons, but with precisely calculated quantum cascade fields that disrupted the fundamental energy signatures of the alien shields. The first alien warship simply dissolved. It didn't explode. It didn't break apart. The quantum cascade fields interacted with its molecular structure in ways the Imperium scientists had never anticipated. The massive vessel began to disintegrate at the quantum level, its advanced shielding technology rendered completely ineffective. Commander Rodriguez watched in a mixture of scientific fascination and military precision. The breakthrough from Dr. Jack Reynolds' team was working perfectly. Each shot was a mathematical precision strike, targeting the fundamental weaknesses in the alien technology. The Imperium fleet's tactical systems went into shock. Their combat algorithms, developed over thousands of conquests, had no response to this type of warfare. The humans weren't fighting with traditional weapons. They were attacking at the most fundamental level of physical existence. Second wave incoming, a tactical officer called out. The remaining alien ships regrouped, attempting to understand this new threat. They launched a barrage of energy weapons that would have vaporized most planetary defense systems. But the human platforms had been designed with unexpected adaptability. Quantum reactive adaptive alloys absorbed and redirected the energy, turning the alien attack into a source of additional power for the defensive grid. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden orbital bases. These weren't traditional spacecraft, but hybrid vehicles that combined human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien technology. Each pilot was connected to their craft through advanced neural interfaces, creating a level of responsiveness that defied traditional combat mechanics. Lieutenant Michael Chen, leading the 1st Fighter Squadron, moved with an almost prescient ability. His craft dodged alien weapon systems with movements that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The neural interface allowed him to process information and make tactical decisions faster than any traditional combat system. The battle became a dance of mathematical precision and unexpected creativity. Where the Imperium expected rigid combat protocols, they found a defense system that was fundamentally unpredictable. Each human response was unique, each tactical decision a surprise. By the time the first wave was neutralized, only 3 of the 12 original invasion ships remained. They hung in space, their systems completely confused by the encounter. The humans hadn't just defended themselves, they had fundamentally challenged the Imperium's understanding of warfare. Commander Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. "Transmission to alien fleet," she ordered. "Prepare our response." The message was simple and direct. Humanity was not going to be an easy conquest. The countdown continued. And for the first time, the Imperium felt something entirely new. Uncertainty. Deep within the Imperium's central intelligence complex, data streams from the first Earth encounter created unprecedented chaos. The analysis algorithms, refined over millennia of galactic conquests, began to break down. Every predictive model failed spectacularly. Chief Analyst Fornak studied the holographic displays with growing confusion. The human defensive response defied every known principle of military engagement. Their combat systems operated with a level of improvisational complexity that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of strategic warfare. The intercepted communications revealed something even more disturbing. Unlike the hierarchical civilizations the Imperium had conquered before, humans displayed a radical decentralization of command and an almost chaotic approach to decision-making. Individual units made split-second decisions that seemed to contradict all known military protocols. One particularly troubling intercept caught Vornak's attention. A fighter pilot had deviated completely from expected combat patterns, using a planetary magnetic field to create an unexpected trajectory that neutralized 3 separate attack vectors. The pilot's communication log revealed not a cold, calculated response, but something far more dangerous: creativity driven by pure survival instinct. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a lead psychologist in the Global Defense Initiative, understood the true nature of humanity's strength. In a classified briefing to military and scientific leaders, she explained the fundamental difference between human and alien cognitive approaches. "We're not just fighting," she told the assembled experts. "We're solving an existential puzzle. Our greatest weapon is our ability to adapt, to find solutions where others see only obstacles." The global communication networks became a weapon in themselves. Where the Imperium expected rigid information control, they found a human society that could reorganize and communicate at lightning speed. Social media platforms transformed into real-time strategic coordination centers. A software engineer in Brazil could provide a critical insight that would be implemented by a military team in South Korea within hours. Psychological warfare took on an entirely new dimension. Human cultural exports, music, art, literature, began to be weaponized in unexpected ways. Translated cultural artifacts were deliberately leaked into Imperium communication channels. Each piece carried subtle psychological triggers that challenged the alien understanding of individual agency and collective survival. A group of linguists and communication experts developed specialized transmission protocols designed to be fundamentally incomprehensible to the Imperium's communication systems. These weren't just encryption methods, they were entire communication paradigms that relied on human creativity, context, and emotional nuance. The Imperium's intelligence systems began to experience what could only be described as cognitive dissonance. Every time they thought they had understood human behavior, a new unpredictable response would emerge. A military strategy would be countered by an economic maneuver. A technological solution would be matched by a completely unexpected cultural approach. General Michael Chen, coordinating the global defense strategy, understood the psychological battlefield better than most. "We're not just defending," he told his international team. "We're demonstrating that survival is more than technological superiority. It's about adaptability, creativity, and the ability to find hope in impossible situations." Imperium communication logs began to show signs of something unprecedented: confusion. Their vast database of conquered civilizations had no reference point for human behavior. Where they expected submission, they found resistance. Where they anticipated uniform response, they encountered infinite variation. The most terrifying aspect for the Imperium was the human capacity for collective action coupled with individual creativity. Each human became a potential point of unexpected resistance. Their neural networks, both technological and social, worked in ways that defied traditional computational models. Cultural diversity became a weapon. The same species that could produce classical music and street art could also develop quantum communication systems and adaptive combat technologies. The Imperium's rigid understanding of technological development couldn't comprehend a species that could simultaneously pursue art, science, warfare, and philosophical exploration. Vornak's final report to the Imperium leadership was unprecedented in its uncertainty. The humans, the report concluded, are not a civilization to be conquered. They are a problem to be understood. The psychological battlefield had become the most critical front of the emerging conflict, and humanity was proving to be an opponent unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The countdown continued. The modified spacecraft hangar in New Mexico looked like nothing the Imperium would recognize as a military installation. Massive doors concealed launch bays that had been constructed using a combination of reverse-engineered alien technology and human innovation. Each vessel was a testament to humanity's ability to adapt, improvise, and overcome. Commander Sarah Rodriguez walked the line of prototype spacecraft, her trained eye catching every detail. These were not traditional military vessels. They were living machines, each one a unique solution to the challenge of interstellar warfare. Adaptive hull materials that could reconfigure mid-battle. Quantum communication systems that could penetrate the most advanced alien jamming technologies. Propulsion systems that borrowed principles from the very ships they had captured in previous engagements. The first human battle group was unlike any military formation in galactic history. 12 primary vessels, each accompanied by a swarm of smaller, highly autonomous drones. The drones weren't just support craft. They were an extension of human tactical thinking, capable of making split-second decisions that would confuse any traditional combat algorithm. Dr. Jack Reynolds, the quantum physicist who had been crucial to early defensive technologies, now stood at the heart of the offensive strategy. His team had developed a method of quantum entanglement that allowed the battle group to communicate and coordinate in ways that defied traditional understanding of space warfare. "We're not just attacking," Reynolds explained to the assembled crew. "We're solving a complex, multi-dimensional problem. Each engagement is a puzzle, and we're the ones writing the rules." The target was carefully chosen. Intelligence gathered from captured Imperium communication logs pointed to a critical support infrastructure hub. It wasn't a military installation in the traditional sense. It was the logistical heart of the Imperium's expansion strategy. Destroying it would be more than a military victory. It would be a strategic dismantling of the alien civilization's ability to wage war. Lieutenant Michael Chen would lead the primary strike team. His neural interface with the spacecraft went beyond traditional piloting. He didn't just control the ship, he became the ship. Every system, every potential trajectory was an extension of human creativity and survival instinct. The launch was unlike any military operation in human history. Traditional countdown protocols were abandoned. Instead, the battle group seemed to simply exist. One moment they were in the hangar. The next, they were cutting through space with a fluidity that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Imperium early warning systems registered something was wrong moments before the attack. But by then, it was too late. The human battle group had already exploited quantum communication channels to create a tactical network that was essentially invisible to traditional detection methods. The first wave of the counterattack wasn't about destruction. It was about disruption. Quantum cascade fields disabled communication networks. Adaptive electronic warfare systems turned the Imperium's own technologies against themselves. Critical supply lines were severed not through brute force, but through precise, mathematically calculated interventions. Commander Rodriguez watched the tactical displays, each movement a carefully orchestrated dance of technological innovation. Where the Imperium expected linear response, they found a multi-dimensional attack that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The most shocking element was the human approach to collateral damage. Unlike the Imperium's total war strategy, the human battle group went out of its way to minimize unintended destruction. Captured communication logs would later reveal something unprecedented. The human military was actively trying to reduce civilian casualties among the Imperium's own population. As the operation concluded, the damage was surgical. Critical infrastructure disabled. Communication networks scrambled. Supply lines disrupted. But no unnecessary destruction. It was a message as much as a military operation. The Imperium was not dealing with just another conquest. They were facing a species that could turn warfare into a form of problem-solving. The final transmission from Commander Rodriguez was simple and direct. "We are not here to destroy. We are here to demonstrate that there are alternatives to conquest." The countdown continued, and the galaxy watched in growing uncertainty. The communication came through a heavily encrypted quantum channel, barely detectable and existing in a state of quantum uncertainty that would have been impossible to intercept just weeks earlier. Ambassador Catherine Rice studied the transmission with a mixture of caution and hope. The message was from the Korvax, a species that had been under Imperium control for 7 generations. Their civilization had been reduced to little more than a resource extraction colony, their culture systematically dismantled over centuries of oppression. Yet here they were, reaching out to humanity with something that looked remarkably like hope. "We have been watching," the transmission read. The language was complex, layered with meanings that required multiple levels of translation. "Your resistance is not like the others." Dr. Elena Rodriguez led the xenolinguistics team tasked with decoding the transmission. Each word was a puzzle, each sentence a complex mathematical and cultural equation. The Korvax communication style was fundamentally different from human language, more mathematical, less linear, filled with contextual nuances that required a complete reimagining of communication. The Global Diplomatic Response Team worked around the clock. This was more than a first contact scenario. This was a potential turning point in galactic politics. Humanity had gone from a potential conquest target to something far more interesting, a wild card that no one could predict. More transmissions began to arrive. The Zelnar, a silicon-based species from the outer spiral arm, provided detailed star charts of Imperium supply routes. The Chorist, a collective consciousness that had been fragmented by Imperium occupation, shared intricate details about the alien civilization's psychological weaknesses. Each transmission carried an underlying message. "We have been waiting for someone like you." Ambassador Rice understood the delicate nature of the situation. These were not straightforward alliances. These were desperate civilizations reaching out to a potential lifeline. The human approach was fundamentally different from the Imperium's conquest model. Where the alien empire saw subjugation, humanity offered collaboration. A series of diplomatic meetings were arranged, not through traditional diplomatic channels, but through a complex network of quantum-encrypted communication platforms. Representatives from oppressed civilizations appeared as holographic projections, their forms as diverse as the galaxy itself. The Chorist representative was a shimmering network of light, its consciousness spread across multiple quantum states. The Zelnar delegation appeared as intricate crystal formations that communicated through vibrational frequencies. Each species brought its own unique method of communication, and the human team adapted with remarkable speed. Dr. Rodriguez's team developed real-time translation systems that went beyond simple language conversion. These were cultural interpretation algorithms that could navigate the complex psychological and philosophical nuances of interspecies communication. The most surprising element was humanity's approach to liberation. Unlike the Imperium's model of total conquest, the human diplomatic strategy focused on self-determination. Each species was approached as a potential partner, not a resource to be exploited. Intelligence began to flow from these new allies. Star charts, technological insights, cultural knowledge. Each piece of information was treated as a collaborative gift, not a resource to be stolen. The Korvax provided insights into Imperium communication networks. The Zelnar shared advanced material science concepts that complemented human quantum research. General Michael Chen coordinated the strategic implications. These were not traditional military alliances. They were networks of mutual understanding, each species contributing its unique perspective to a growing resistance movement. The Imperium's communication channels began to show signs of confusion. Their predictive models, developed over millennia of conquest, could not comprehend this new dynamic. A resistance that wasn't driven by traditional military objectives was something completely outside their understanding. Ambassador Rice prepared a transmission that would be sent across multiple quantum channels. It was a message of solidarity, of hope, of potential liberation. The words were carefully chosen, translated through multiple layers of linguistic and cultural interpretation. "We do not come to conquer," the message read. "We come to demonstrate that there are alternatives to oppression." The galaxy listened, and for the first time in generations, oppressed civilizations began to believe that change was possible. The countdown continued. The battle space defied traditional understanding of warfare. Where military strategists once spoke of two-dimensional or three-dimensional combat, this engagement existed in a realm of quantum complexity that challenged the very concept of spatial conflict. Commander Sarah Rodriguez stood at the central interface of the human battle group, her consciousness simultaneously connected to multiple battle platforms. The neural link was more than a technological marvel. It was a living network of human potential, each crew member an integral part of a greater collective consciousness. The Imperium's primary fleet arrived with the calculated precision of a machine designed for absolute dominance. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each capable of sterilizing entire planetary systems, dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Their obsidian hulls absorbed light, creating massive shadows that seemed to devour the very fabric of space. But this was not the same Earth they had encountered weeks earlier. Dr. Jack Reynolds's quantum cascade technologies had transformed human defensive capabilities into something that defied conventional understanding. The battle platforms were living systems, adaptive networks that could reconfigure themselves faster than the Imperium's combat algorithms could process. The first wave of Imperium weapons struck, and simply dissolved. Quantum entanglement fields created by the human defense grid transformed incoming energy into harmless particle dispersions. Where the aliens expected total destruction, they found their most powerful weapons neutralized before they could even complete their attack vectors. Lieutenant Michael Chen led a squadron of adaptive combat vessels that moved with a fluidity that seemed to violate the laws of physics. Each ship was more than a machine. It was an extension of human creativity, capable of making split-second decisions that would have been impossible in traditional warfare. The allied civilizations that had joined humanity's resistance contributed more than just military support. The Korvax provided advanced sensor technologies. The Zelmar shared material science insights that allowed human ships to adapt their molecular structure in real time. The Korist collective consciousness provided tactical coordination that transcended traditional communication methods. What the Imperium encountered was not a traditional military force. It was a living, breathing network of collective intelligence. Each human ship was simultaneously an individual unit and part of a greater whole. Tactical decisions were made not through rigid command structures, but through a fluid, adaptive network of collective consciousness. Ambassador Catherine Rice managed the diplomatic side of the conflict. Her communication channels were not just about military coordination. They were about presenting an alternative to the Imperium's model of galactic conquest. Each transmission carried a message of potential cooperation, of a different way of existing. The battle became a multi-dimensional chess match that went far beyond physical combat. Quantum communication networks allowed for tactical responses that seemed to occur before they were even initiated. The human battle group didn't just defend. They anticipated, adapted, and transformed the very nature of the conflict. Imperium leadership began to experience something unprecedented. A complete breakdown of their predictive models. Every tactical approach was met with a response that seemed to come from multiple directions simultaneously. Traditional concepts of attack and defense became meaningless. As the conflict reached its critical point, something extraordinary happened. The human battle group didn't seek total destruction. Instead, they systematically disabled the Imperium's ability to wage war. Critical communication networks were neutralized. Propulsion systems were transformed into harmless energy fields. Weapon platforms were converted into potential research technologies. The final transmission from Commander Rodriguez was a message that would be studied for generations. We are not here to destroy. We are here to demonstrate that there are alternatives to conquest. That survival is more than domination. That intelligence is about cooperation, not subjugation. The Imperium's primary leadership vessel went silent, not destroyed, not defeated in a traditional sense, simply transformed. In the vast silence of space, humanity had done more than survive. They had redefined the very concept of conflict. The countdown was over. A new chapter was beginning.